concerning Community Development Block Grants, GBD funding. Councilmember Tenorio.
Thank you. At one point in time, we had been looking at doing downtown Main Street program. One of the classes that I took at the TML conference was specifically geared towards the CDBG program. The CDBG program does offer block grants for our downtown businesses. It has to be applied in conjunction with the Main Street grant. And I would like to have some input from the council as to whether or not we as a city of Cal would like to pursue that, as well as with pursuing that grant, it allows for additional grants for our downtown businesses to apply for funding to assist them in growing bigger. So I would like permission of our council to direct staff to see if we can get some information that would be more geared towards the city to see if that's a viable option for our downtown.
You're saying to look into applying to become
Yes.
a Main Street, does it have a Main Street
even
designation?
if it's not to apply, but just looking into see how hard it would be, would we qualify for it, what kind of financial benefits could it bring our city, and having those questions brought back to it, or the answers brought to us. But I, as an individual council member, cannot direct that. It has to be a directive of the whole council.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions of Councilmember Tenorio or comments related to the Main Street program?
Actually, I have a question of Scott. Let's see what his opinion is of it.
My opinion?
Yes, sir.
On both CDBG and Main Street program?
Yes.
Okay. Scott Sellers for the record.
I mean, you would be the one actually doing
Yes.
the work to get it,
Thank
deal
you.
with it. So, what's your opinion on it?
All right, thank you. Okay, well, thank you for asking my opinion, and for the new council members that may not understand CDBG, that's Community Development Block Grant. It is a program that's been around for a long time, probably 40 plus years. I believe in the current federal administration's proposed to eliminate all CDBG funding. I have a lot of experience with these programs, these grants, as well as the National Main Street program, and so I'm just going to try to give you some history and kind of where I see the city of Kyle fitting into that. Cities are either entitlement communities or they're non-entitlement with CDBG. Anything less than 50,000 population typically is a non-entitlement community, meaning that those dollars are very competitive. Under the CDBG program, there are a variety of different buckets, and the state administers some, and the cities typically apply through the state to receive those. You can have them for the home program, through Department of Community Development, Public Affairs, Housing Development, and then there are a variety of other departments that administer those funds. The Historical Preservation Office typically is the one that looks at the National Main Street program as it is implemented, adopted locally. And there are funds through CDBG for that program. Typically those funds are for preservation of historic assets in your community. Under the National Main Street program, I have worked closely with it. In fact, I used to sit on a board that helped funnel those dollars to local communities. So I'm extremely familiar with how the National Main Street program works as it works with each state. Having been a couple times in the past part of the National Main Street program, I've seen firsthand the benefits of that program and maybe some areas for improvement. There are many communities that are Main Street programs just to our north, just to our south. They're part of the Main Street program. What I have learned, I guess, through going through it for multiple years is that a community can be Main Street without necessarily falling under the umbrella of Main Street. There are quite a few reporting requirements because of the federal dollars and the programs, the strings that are attached to those programs. And what I typically found was that my Main Street manager, that person responsible to oversee the program, spent about 25% of their time, more or less, to filling out reports, forms. Basically, it's the red tape of administering the Main Street program as it relates to the dollars in the CDBG. So I got away from the actual program, but kept the program. The Main Street program in general is a great program. There are 4 main points that Main Street falls under, or that pushes out to the downtowns. And the 4-pronged approach of the Main Street program is very applicable to our downtown, and I would like to see that implemented. Under the national program, we would need a dedicated Main Street manager, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing here. Our downtown is a little small for a dedicated position for downtown, but could it work? Yeah. And there are a lot of things. We've put together a plan for downtown that really needs to be spruced up a little bit, and we're working with the Workforce Development Group out of UTSA and San Marcos to refresh our plan. So there are things that we are working on and need to continue to do. The CDBG funds for our downtown right now, I think would be wise to apply for a set project. So I think that would be kind of the caveat. You don't want to, and I don't even think you can apply for ongoing operations, for a position. So the city would have to invest in a position. Then we would apply for those funds for historic preservation of the downtown, whether that be for the park or buildings, that are historically identified or can be historically identified. We'd probably need to put together some sort of we actually have an architectural board, and we've got that as from our old designation of the City Square Park as a historic preservation asset of the community. So it's kind of a roundabout way of saying I think Main Street program is a good program, but not under the rules and strings of the National Main Street program as they are today. So whether or not the city wants to move forward with such a program depends on what level of funding the council wants to put toward the downtown. Do you want to fund a position to oversee not only the programming of the downtown, which events is part of that 4-point approach, but look at the historic preservation nature of our downtown, and then at the same time can go toward those CDBG funds while they still exist for historic preservation purposes. Thank you. Any questions?
So, Mr. Sellers, to me it sounds like you're not necessarily for us going after it as a full-blown program. You're looking
yes,
at
that's correct.
Literally just pick out the few things that we could use, because it sounds like to me like you're already actually following the plan. You already have that implemented in place without actually being beholden to the national program.
That's correct.
So yeah, I'd like to see that we pick projects that would be useful to go after for grant funding.
Yeah,
Not necessarily the whole Main Street designation.
one little caveat, there are additional funds that are available only to designated Main Street communities, okay? So, but typically those are downtown planning grants, limited funds for those, as well as planning for historic preservation upgrades. There's a state architect that will actually help draw plans for your buildings if you want to do facade renovations, things like that. So there are monies that will go toward nationally or state Main Street programs that we would not apply for, but typically those are very competitive and small grants that as a community we could probably budget for those separately. The amount of work going into maintaining the program is probably too much for what we need to be doing in our downtown today.
So like I just said, I think it would be beneficial if we went and looked at specific projects that could be useful for this funding.
Councilmember Tenorio, is there anyone else that has any questions or thoughts? Councilmember Tenorio.
You brought up a great program that I completely shouldn't have escaped my mind, but the home program.
Yes.
I'm very familiar with the home program. How difficult would it, we have so many homes in this area that could be truly beneficial through this program. What would that entail?
The home program, I've had quite a bit of success with that. I think it's a funding source through the state that is not quite so competitive. And, I can't remember the cap on the number of homes that it would, provide assistance for. So basically, the home program is a way that the city can apply funding toward distressed property to, restore, rebuild those properties. The one concern that Kyle has, which is a good problem to have, is that our census block data shows that we are too wealthy as a community to receive some of those funds. You have to be a disadvantaged community to receive some of those funds. And the census blocks are fairly large, right? So could we receive home funds? I think we could. It would be in very targeted areas that we'd have to pull out of the census block to do so. So we can look into that. Probably get up to 5 to 6 homes done in a year.
You kind of touched on what the home program did, but, it really is good because there are a lot of older homes in our community that the people who live in those homes can't afford to update their homes and to bring them up to codes. Home program funding can be utilized to bring them to code on a grant. And it would help increase the value of that property as well as help, maintain the appearance of whatever the neighborhood that they're in. And I don't believe that requires a full-time person to
That
dedicate the
does not.
funding.
That's correct.
So that is something that we could look into?
Yes, sure. Yeah. Absolutely. We'll
Well,
look
I
into
can't
that.
make the direction. It has to be.
Mr. Mayor?
We used with the MPA program, the grad program, we've used students from Texas State to kind of take ownership of projects. Beautification was one of them. I can't remember what the other one was. But this allowed some of those students to really take ownership of projects that are tangible, that our citizens can see, and it also helped us save money. But these aren't just, undergrad college students, just, trying to do something to get by. This is something that they're using to transition into professional workplace. Is this something that we could maybe contact Dr. Longoria to get some students to do these kind of projects?
For the home grant?
Yeah.
It's a good question.
You're not counting it out.
Yeah, how do I be politically correct? No, it's a program that I think they can help with. We need somebody who can administer the program from beginning to end for each property. So the application is a little tedious, which is why there are more funds available. So if they can help us with the application process on staff, we can oversee the renovation of the asset, and then maybe the students could do all the reporting that's required afterward.
Okay.
I mean,
Just an idea.
Yeah. Wherever we can get a student group to help with some forms and grants, absolutely.
That's all I had regarding the CDBG funding.
Okay. I think it's wise to look at it prior to,
Before it goes away.
If it goes away, yeah. Again, since we're non-entitlement, we do have to be in the competitive program. It's going to be very competitive this year. Once the city hits 50,000, we would be entitlement. I'm not sure if the entitlement portion is going away, but probably would also.
Okay.
I'd be amenable to the home program.
Okay, all right, we'll look into that.
Anything else? Any other questions? All right, we'll move on to